am Ashley LaRoche, one of the doctors at the Animal Hospital of Statesville, and this is my sidekick Kyle. We are back for another Lakeside chat. We're done with the fireside chats for the season, thank goodness.
All one of them.
Yeah, yes. So we're kind of here to talk about an interesting disease. I still get questions about it. We educate clients about it quite a bit, but Toxoplasma, which is a protozoal parasite. So
what is it?
So it is a protozoal parasite. It's in the same class of parasite that, like malaria, a lot of people know what malaria is, or coccidia. So they're single cellular parasites that can cause havoc to those that get infected with it. So Toxoplasmosis is considered a zoonotic disease, which means humans can be susceptible to it, and that's where we do a lot of education with clients about it. The definitive host for this parasite is the cat, and a lot of us have cats in our house. So
how do they get it? Where do they get it from if you have an inside cat?
Well, if you have an inside cat, typically they're going to have to get it from eating an intermediate host. So that's usually from hunting, so cats that go outside and eat rodents and wildlife, that wildlife host often has the immature stages in their muscles, and the cat eats the wildlife, the creature, including birds, and then the cat becomes infected. And so then this parasite multiplies, and then depending on how the cat got infected, it will shed eggs in its feces, and then typically they are eaten by intermediate stage hosts like wildlife and things like that, and then that cycle starts again to where they get muscle infections. The wildlife does. So that's how it's propagated amongst cats and wildlife typically.
Can it kill its host?
Not usually. So it kind of likes the cat. So and the cat kind of keeps it under control for the most part. So if a cat becomes infected, it kind of hangs out in the cat's body. It forms tissue stages as well in the cat. But it just kind of hangs out there and doesn't do a whole lot unless the cat becomes severely immunosuppressed. And then that cat can, develop some clinical diseases where it depends on what organ systems are affected in the cat, will dictate how sick it gets and how its signs basically.
So maybe an FIV cat.
Yeah, definitely. They can get granulomas in the eyes of these organisms, in their liver, things like that. Overall, the actual active infection in a cat's pretty rare though. They have to be very, very immunosuppressed to get sick.
What are signs of it?
In people or in the cats? So in cats, yeah, you might see fever, you might see some changes in eyesight, you might see a cat that's not eating. The signs are just kind of nebulous sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes we'll see abnormalities in blood work, things like that. So people, from what I understand, are kind of similar. So humans get infected by eating raw meat. So the same host sources potentially that a cat would get infected with would infect us, except we're not its natural host. So yeah, so we do not allow it to finish out its life cycle, but it basically can start replicating in us in our tissues, and that's how we get sick. It's more usually immunosuppressed humans, and also pregnant humans are a big deal because those immature stages can infect an unborn fetus, and that's where we get lots of questions. Can I get sick from my cat? I'm pregnant, what should I do? Those sorts of things.
So you are pregnant and they say don't empty the litter box. Why is that? Do they just float up from the air?
Yes. So when a cat defecates, it sometimes has eggs. If a cat is infected, it could have eggs from this parasite in the feces, but it takes 1 to 3 days for those eggs to become infected, where they will, if the human were to ingest those eggs, you have to ingest them, that the human would get sick. And like you said, I guess possibly really dried cat feces. You could have stuff wafting up while you're cleaning it. But it takes 1 to 3 days for that to happen. So either having somebody else clean the litter pan while you're pregnant, or just scooping it multiple times a day, you're at very, very low risk at that point. So
what would it do to a baby?
They can cause various birth defects.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
So
it depends on where these immature stages land and start replicating, that sort of thing.
Obviously,
So
they don't have good immune systems at that age.
that's right. That's right. And they're
Or non-age.
and the parasite is seeing the fetal tissue as tissue. It's not really discriminating, kind of on it's just another host to this parasite.
So avoidance is the best way to
Avoidance.
not get it.
Right. And with that being said, so uncooked meats, when you handle uncooked meats, it could have, they're called bradiozoites, or these immature stages of this parasite. In it, you can't see them, but you could get that meat juice on your hands, and you go to wipe your face, and people could get infected that way.
Does it have to be like an open?
No,
Or can it pierce?
it's by
It can
mouth.
go
Yeah.
through, just by mouth.
Yeah,
so
oral
it can't
fecal.
go through your skin.
No, correct. Oral fecal. If you were to get transplanted organs that were infected with it, you could get it. Also gardening, anytime you're in dirt, that's where cats tend to like to deposit their feces. So wear gloves when you're gardening. When you buy vegetables, wash them off. So, what you're maybe seeing here is the cat is not the highest risk in the household. It's some of the other things that we do that put us kind of at a little higher risk.
What about dogs?
Dogs are gonna not, so the dog is gonna be like a human, where a dog would eat cat poo, and dog would get intermediate muscle cysts from it, basically, and then probably walk around never having any problems with it, unless the dog got immunocompromised.
Yeah, I was gonna say, those are delicacies sometimes, and they can find it in the middle of the woods. And
Yeah. So usually, and evidently a lot of people have muscle cysts, but it doesn't really do anything unless you become immunocompromised. And then it just goes crazy and starts replicating because your immune system is not keeping it at bay. And that's basically the group that has problems with this disease.
So basically, avoidance, wash your hands.
Yes, hygiene.
Wash whatever raw meat comes in contact with.
Right. Do not feed your cat raw meat. Commercial cat food. It's been processed to heated, so things like Toxoplasma can't live in it. So don't feed your cats raw meat. Don't let them hunt. Keep them inside, because then they can't hunt those sources. And is a great way to avoid your cat getting infected. And I think on the few studies that have been done to surveil, I think less than 1% of cats out there have, kind of positive for it. So
Are there raw diets for cats?
there probably are, and we don't recommend raw diet for anything because of all these parasites, dog, cat, human. Cook everything to 160 degrees. There are no enzymes in meat that the animal, cat or dog, need for digestion. So that's a misnomer. So just cook it. They get the same pathogens we do. So yeah.
I know there's a lot of push toward raw diets in dogs, and I never really heard about it in cats. But then again, I think dry food. Shame on me.
Right. Now, if you insist on feeding non-commercial cat foods, at least cook it. And there's a lot of other reasons not to go off the grid feeding cats, because they have really specific dietary needs, that need to have, they need taurine in their diet. So
they need to be fulfilled.
Yeah, that have to be fulfilled. And the commercial companies are able to do that much better than we are. So
yeah, I'd hate to cook for a cat.
Yeah.
I tried that once with kidney diet and ended up she liked the dry kidney diet better than anything I ever made.
That's right.
Any other precautions or?
I would say, besides keeping your cat as an indoor cat, it keeps it safer. It prevents your cat from maybe getting infected with this parasite. So in cats, typically once they're infected, they only shed eggs from this parasite one time in their life. So and it only lasts for 1 to 3 weeks. So usually if We don't recommend routine surveillance for this disease necessarily, unless I have a cat that I worried is sick from it, which is pretty rare. You know, basically, if the cat has antibodies to this disease, that tells me it was exposed and was infected, and its immune system has taken care of it, and it probably has shed its eggs already in the past, you know, and so it's probably pretty immune to it, and it probably won't shed eggs again.
What tests would you run to find out?
They're antibody tests. So you do two things: antibody tests that tells us, is this cat susceptible? If it's negative, it's susceptible. Keep your cat inside. Don't feed it raw meat. All of that kind of stuff. If it's positive, it's been exposed already, and it's what we call seroconverted, and it's probably dealing with it. It's shed its eggs already. It won't shed again. So if you run, you know, send a fecal off to the lab and the cat's seropositive, it's unlikely that that cat will shed again. So you're probably pretty yeah,
it's sample too.
Yep, it's yes, okay. Correct.
Not a blood sample.
Well, we do both. You can do both.
Okay.
A stool sample and a blood sample. I think it's so rarely found on fecals. You know, I just think it's not that common for cats to shed, and they only shed for such a small amount in their life that usually if we're surveilling, I look at antibody tests for the most part in kitty cats. So, and it's a disease that's people get kind of really concerned about, but it's actually a disease that's relatively easily avoidable. So, and there's a lot of other reasons to practice good meat hygiene and gardening hygiene too. So,
how is it treated in cats and people? I mean,
yeah, it's an antibiotic, typically extra label use, but the clindamycin
extra label means not on the label,
yeah.
But a doctor can say, this works, we know it works, we're going to use that.
A longer course of clindamycin, which is an antibiotic, and sometimes the sulfa type drugs are used. So,
so people would be the same thing?
I would think so.
And sulfa drugs?
Yeah, I would think so. And I think the incidence in people, I want to say CDC says is like, as far as people walking around with it and not having a problem with it, are less than 10%, I think. But worldwide that changes, you know, just, you know, other places in the world have a higher incidence than we do. And cats, I think, you know, it's pretty low overall. So, for instance, I myself was negative for it when I was tested years ago when my daughter was a baby. And I handle a lot of sick cats. So, like, you know, that I'm not poo-pooing it, because I think you should take it seriously, and I think you should practice appropriate measures, particularly if you're pregnant. It's a great reason to make your husband or whoever change the litter box daily. But it is an avoidable condition for the most part. And you know, don't let anybody tell you to, you can't have your cat while you're pregnant. You know,
right.
Even, yeah.
That's a little extreme.
Yeah, it's very extreme, yeah.
Well, and now she gave me a list of things from the CDC, so they have a lot of other information. It's a little tricky to understand in some places. I've found it just like particular care. What do they mean by particular care and that type of thing? But it does have some, you know, public health considerations and things to do, which we've gone over for the most part. So there are other sources. And
a good one for lay people is petsandparasites.org. So it's made by, you know, it's made by a veterinary group, so it's good information.
That's always good to know about any parasite that your pets can get, because they can share most of them with you.
Yes, exactly, or a lot of them. And this is zoonotic, so humans have the potential to get it, but as long as we avoid ingesting cat feces that's infected and practice meat handling hygiene and fruit handling hygiene and good gardening hygiene, you know, that the risk is very, very minimal. Yeah.
Like clean the boards that you cut raw meat and stuff like that. So not just your hands, but the utensils and the pots and pans. And
my husband he has the meat cutting board and then everything else cutting board for that reason. So, but you know, and then raw meat, of course, you got salmonella and a whole bunch of other, you know, bacterial pathogens involved that we should probably avoid. So,
but I love filet mignon.
Yeah.
Won't give that up.
As long as it's not raw, You're good.
That's pretty rare, but
Yeah, it just needs to be flash cooked to 160 and you're good.
okay. Well,
or don't get immunosuppressed.
yeah, that's a better option.
Yeah.
I just won't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that probably covers it pretty well.
And if you have any questions or concerns about that, or you're interested in how to go about testing, which like I said, it's an expensive test and we don't necessarily do it for routine surveillance unless I have specific reasons, but we can talk with you about that in the office sometime. But otherwise, we're glad to be back for our Lakeside chats.
Yes. She was excited because it's getting hotter, and now I would sit out in the winter, but she's a warm weather girl,
yes.
and so we thought it's a good day for the lake. So.
Despite my Bemidji, Minnesota shirt. Okay.
your windsock off there. It's called a dead cat, but
Yeah. Oh
for our
boy.
profession, that doesn't sound like a good thing to
No.
put on a
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.